What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to the first probability of 2023. We have Nassourdine Imavov going against Sean Strickland. Looks like Kelvin Gastelum's out. So a new matchup for the main event, and I'm upset that I just recorded my video, but I do like that matchup a little bit better. I think it's going to be a really fun fight, so looking forward to that. And looking forward to talking some props with Uncle Weezy. Uncle Weezy, I saw Spivak in the background. What's going on with that?
Oh, yeah. This is just how I get fired up. I mean, if that doesn't get your blood pumping, which is what Spivak wants as a vampire. He wants your blood pumping when he sinks those teeth into your neck. But that's what we're trying to do to the bookies here. We're trying to do to the bookies what Sergey Spivak does to his opponents, and that's the good old-fashioned blood drain here. And we drain their blood by looking at these analytics, knowing what all the numbers are, knowing what the price is, whether they are overpriced, underpriced. And the data is what really gives us the best look at how to determine value. So let's do that. Let's find some value on this card. I've already got a couple over-under bets that I've placed, and I've got a couple others that I am looking at. So I'm looking forward to breaking it down with you in the chat tonight.
Let's do it. As always, guys, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe here to the MMA Engine if you do not already. And I do want to shout out the chat. It's been a while, guys. We got Propaholic in the building, first one in here. We got Jeff in the building as well. We got Daz. We got Lou Betcha. We got Andy Mush. We got UFC Egg. We have XINSAIYNE breaking the news. Shout out to him. We got Lou Betcha again. We got Glenn in the chat. We got 2 Cents in the chat. What is up, everybody? Thank you for hanging out with us here on a Monday. But Weezy, I say we get into it, and let us start with an absolute banger. I'm very happy they made this matchup. One of my favorite fighters, Priscilla Cachuera, going against Ciara Eubanks. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is now plus 128. The under 2.5 is minus 158. The fight goes to decision plus 160. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 200. So the over 2.5 opened up at plus 120. It went to plus 160, and there's been money pouring in on that ever since. So a lot of money coming in on this over. On 5 dimes, it is still sitting at plus 165 here. So Weezy, what is sticking out on this one?
The over just screams bet me. And I got it at plus 160 yesterday. I actually hit it for 2 units. Usually a big bet for me for any underdog bet, any plus money bet is 1 unit. But this is one where the analytics were absolutely just screaming. You've got to bet this fight, and you got to bet it heavy because the line is mispriced. So we've got Priscilla Cachuera and Ciara Eubanks have 7 of their 18 UFC fights have finished inside the distance. Now, for Cachuera, it's 62.5%, 5 of 8. But for Eubanks, it's only 2 of 10 fights that have finished inside the distance. The fight that she won inside the distance was against Elise Reed, short notice, up a weight class for Reed. It was really a mismatch. And the one that she lost inside the distance, she got kicked in the liver or maybe it was the solar plexus. Either way, she was done. And we've seen those body kicks destroy people before, men or women. You get hit in the right spot in that liver or in the solar plexus, and if the fight is over. But Ciara Eubanks is definitely a decisionator. I mean, if you think about it, this is a woman who's went to decision 80% of her UFC fights. And if we look over here on this side, we see this number right here, the 61.11%, Brady. That's how many of their combined UFC fights have went to decision. 61.11% of their fights have went over 2.5 rounds. So at plus 135 for the over 2.5 in this fight. Over 2.5 happens in the 135-pound division 69% of the time. That is the analytic. That's how many 3-round fights go over 2.5 rounds in the UFC bantamweight division for ladies. So when we compare the 42.55% implied probability of the line to that benchmark, we're getting a massive break of 26.43% in that price. And then we go down here, Brady, and this is the fighter over 2.5 rates compared to the implied probability of the line. That's 18% because 61% of their fights are going to over 2.5 rounds, but this is only a 42.55% implied probability. So this is an extremely underpriced line. And, at plus 160, which is where it was yesterday when I bet it, that was a 30% break over the benchmark. And when you have that big of a break over the benchmark, you would kind of expect that these fighters weren't going over 2.5 rounds because they're trying to push you into that type of bet when they feel that it's going to go under. This just doesn't make any sense. This line is completely mispriced. Plus 135, easily my favorite time prop bet of the week this week. And I got it at plus 160 for 2 units. At plus 135, it's absolutely still bettable. It's still way underpriced. And if you look at the stylistic components of this matchup, Priscilla finishes fights when she's on the feet. But Sijara Eubanks is excellent with her wrestling, excellent with her top control. She definitely takes her time on top. And she has never finished anybody not named Elise Reed at the UFC level. That's 10 fights. So I do like this fight going over, and this price is just bonkers how cheap it is.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you. I actually had Violence circled for this one. I was hoping to get the fight doesn't go at plus money, but it's minus 200. So just way. I think they're overreacting a lot in this one. So I would agree it would be over for me. I'm probably not going to get to it, especially since it already moved a ton. But I think it's a good look if I was to bet this fight. But I'm probably going to sit back on the first fight of the card and root for my girl Priscilla catch a beating to hopefully pull it off. But we'll see.
All right, you'd be rooting for Handsome in this fight. You are not going to be disappointed because we got a couple of handsome women starting off the card here. The UFC is going hard in 2023, and you put a couple of handsome women in there for the curtain jerker. It shows that the UFC means business this year.
And there's another handsome fighter we'll talk about later on the card as well. So
yes,
I'm looking forward to that. Heck yeah. All right, let's move on to one of my favorite violent spots on the card. We have Charles Johnson going against Jimmy Flick. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds, the over 2.5, and now plus 162, the under 2.5, now minus 192. The under 2.5 opened up at minus 175. It went to minus 120 or minus 115, then went to minus 120. I did bet it there for a unit, and then now money's been coming in on that at minus 192. It looks like the fight doesn't go to decision on 5 dimes is minus 230, and the fight doesn't get a decision on Bet365 is minus 250 here. So yeah, I like violence. I think it's pretty simple to break down. If Flick gets his fight down to the mat, I know Johnson's never been sub, but Flick is an absolute wizard on the mat. And if he does not get the fight down to the mat, if he does not get his way, I do think he's going to kind of crumble, and I think Johnson eventually finishes him. So I like violence here. I think somebody gets finished, whether it's Flick early or Johnson late. But yeah, this under has moved quite a bit the last day and a half.
Yeah, and with good reason. You know, Jimmy Flick has got a 21-fight pro career, and 18 of those fights have finished inside the distance. So, you know, 4 of 5 losses and 14 of 16 wins. So, you know, over that big of a sample size, they have an 86% finish rate for and against for Flick. It's definitely the archetype of fighter that you're looking for violence bets, right, Brady? But then we also look at the fact that Jimmy Flick retired. You know, this guy was not in a gym for 2 years, you know, and then all of a sudden now he's coming back here, but he's not getting any younger. This is a young man's weight class where speed and endurance matter. And Flick doesn't really have either of those things. But what he does have is an extremely aggressive submission game. 14 of his 16 wins coming by way of submission. He's finished both of his UFC wins via submission. So he's very dangerous on the ground. And then Charles Johnson is a slow starter who definitely has got really good boxing. And when he's pressuring his opponent, when he's using his cardio as a weapon, especially late in fights, you see this guy being a dynamic finisher late in fights, really putting it on his opponents. So whether it's Flick via submission early or Charles Johnson landing some big shots and getting a tired Jimmy Flick out of there maybe in the second half of the fight, I see this fight finishing inside the distance. But if we zoom in a little bit here, Brady, on these numbers, you know, we could see that this is a 71.43% implied probability at minus 250 for the fight doesn't go to decision. These fights are, you know, finishing inside the distance in this weight class 42% of the time, and we're paying 71% here. So we're overpaying by 29.35%. We're overpaying by 21.43% when we compare the 71.43% rate to the 50% finish rate of these two combined fighters at the UFC level. So, you know, we've got Johnson, who's been to decision twice, and Flick, who's finished inside the distance twice at the UFC level. So, obviously, the bookies are all over it. These lines have been pushed to where they are way overpriced. That being said, even with fat numbers here for the over 2.5 at plus 162. We don't have enough of a sample size from these guys, only 4 UFC fights to get too excited about these numbers here. But this number here does show that the over 2.5 severely underpriced, and they're trying to push you to that bet because 61.67% of 125-pound men's fights go over 2.5 rounds, but we're only paying 38% here. So, maybe if you think that this one does go the full 3, that's not a bad look. It's an underpriced line, but the narrative stuff is what has me thinking that this fight is going to finish inside the distance, not just the stylistic striker versus grappler matchup. A guy in Flick who's very aggressive with submissions and grappling and wrestling, and a guy in Johnson who's going to be much better on the feet, much faster, the much cleaner boxer. So no matter where this fight goes, Brady, one of these guys is going to be very dangerous, and I do see it finishing inside the distance. It's just that, these are some very juiced lines. Maybe you can parlay them, but even at parlaying these things, you don't want to parlay things that aren't plus EV. Like, you should be betting it straight if you're parlaying it, because otherwise, why are you parlaying it? It's minus EV if you wouldn't bet it straight. So these are very overpriced, but stylistically, that 2-year layoff for Jimmy Flick, there's a lot of things that play into me thinking that this fight does finish inside the distance.
Yeah, I knew I would be overpaying a lot. Even at minus 120, I'm overpaying a lot for that. But I really do like that spot. Well, I'm just curious, what would minus 120 do to that under? I still think it's a pretty decent amount overpayment.
Minus 120?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a huge overpayment, but with a guy like Flick, 86% of his pro fights have finished inside the distance, and 100% of his 2 UFC fights have finished inside the distance. So it is that archetype killer be killed fighter that you have in there, coming off the layoff, getting older, coming out of retirement. And, he's just such an aggressive jiu-jitsu stylist that it's probably going to finish inside the distance, but you're going to have to pay up no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, Kelvin Gastelum had like a mouth injury, they're saying.
So somebody said, J-Bone said that a flying knee, he got hit by a flying knee by a training partner. God. Yeah, that's rough because most of the time, Brady, they're not even able to find a replacement, for a guy like Imavov. So Gastelum would get hurt, so he's not going to get a show check. He's been training for this fight for a while, and then Imavov wouldn't have gotten a replacement had this happened a couple of days later. So it's always a shame when somebody gets hurt during fight week, but at least they found Imavov a replacement, and a damn good one in Sean Strickland.
Yeah. And it looks like there's another change to the card. It looks like it's now Jimmy Flick versus Priscilla Cachuera.
What? I love that matchup. This is great.
That'd be good, man. That'd be a good match.
That'd be really good. I like Flick there.
Yes. Yes. All right, let's move on to an interesting one here. We have Dan Argetta going against Isaac Dalgarian. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is now minus 130. The under 2.5 is now plus 100. The fight goes decision plus 110. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 140. See, I got the under 2.5. I think you did as well at plus 115. It just recently moved 18 minutes ago. And I like that spot. The reason being is Dalgarian has never seen a second round. And I went and watched all this guy's fights, and it didn't take too long because he's finishing guys under like a half of a round each time. And really impressed with what I see from him offensively. It's just if this fight does get extended, what's he going to look like? We've never seen it. And is it even going to get extended in this fight? So I like the under just due to the fact that Dalgarian has never seen a second round. And I'm not even sure that changes here. So WEEZY, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and we look here at Dalgarian's Glory MMA and Fitness was the gym for Dalgarian, and you see 113 of round 1 against Britain, 249 of round 1 against Ostrander, 35 seconds of round 1 against Ebrecht, 145 of round 1 against Moody, and 218 of round 1 against Sam Hernandez, ground and pound. And then you go back to the amateur results. 113 of round 1, win. 129 of round 1, win. 155 of round 1, win. 310 round 1, win. That's the longest that anybody has survived Isaac Dalgarian in a cage. And that's 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And that's over a 9-fight combined pro and amateur slate. So right now, Brady, we don't have to think too much here, because when you've got a killer be killed fighter like that, and then you add to the fact that he's making his UFC debut, so there could be an adrenaline dump there. He's taking the fight, or this is not a short notice fight, right? This is Argetta's first opponent.
I can double check, but
double check that. But I think this is not a short notice fight for Dalgarian, but he is making his debut when he's jumping the Contender Series.
It's not short notice.
Okay, all right. So yeah, very interesting. But this kid Dalgarian, like these guys that he's beating, this is a big step up. TJ Britton, by far the best guy that he's beaten at 7-2. But even TJ Britton, when you look at this guy's numbers, he's a very big featherweight. But the wins, a 9-7 guy, a 1-0 guy. He loses to a 5-1, a 3-1, a 1-1, a 1-1, a 3. So he's not beating anybody. So these guys that he's beating 1-1, 2-3, 0-0, 2-2. It's going to be a big step up in competition against a guy like Argetta, who fought in the tough house. He had a fight against Tercios there. He's getting guys that are 6-3, 12-0, 14-6, and then actually has a really good performance against a guy we're going to talk about shortly in Damon Jackson. So big step up in competition for Dalgarian against a guy like Argetta, who's fought the much better brand of competition. But these guys are similar in size, and they're similar in how they fight. They're both wrestlers. They both do their best work on top, and both have got really good ground and pound and submission games. So I think these guys are very well matched. That plus money on Dalgarian's very interesting. But if you look at the prop template here, you're going to see just big time overpriced numbers here for the fight doesn't go to decision and for the under 2.5. Because Dalgarian has never seen the scorecards, because 78.5% of their fights have finished inside the distance. So even though, they're featherweights and you've only got a 43% finish rate at this weight class, it's worth it paying up at these numbers, Brady, just simply because, these guys finish fights. And if Dalgarian sees a second rounder, it'll be the first time that he's done that. So at the under 2.5, still at plus money, even though the analytics hate it, it's really only 11.5% overpriced, and you're getting a killer be killed fighter here in Dalgarian. So I think it's absolutely worth a shot. It's not like we're laying juice, and we're getting the right archetype of fight. The narrative fits well in that we've got a guy that's making his debut and taking a big step up in competition that's never been out of the first round. So violence would be the way to play here. We do see these underpricings here by 5% and 9% on the fight goes and the over 2.5. But these numbers don't mean a lot because we really don't have a sample size of fights. Only 1 for Argetta and 0 for Dalgarian.
Yep, for sure. Not big of a sample size there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this fight. Looking forward to seeing how both guys perform. But yeah, it would be under for me just due to the fact that Dalgarian has never seen the second round. Simple as that. All right, let's move on to this next one. We have Alon Nascimento going against Carlos Hernandez. With the over-under set at 2.5 rounds, the over 2.5 is minus 175. The under 2.5 rounds is plus 145. The fight goes decision minus 150. The fight doesn't go decision is plus 120. And this one kind of confuses me because it kind of feels like a pretty good over, a pretty good fight goes to decision, but money's been pouring in on these unders. So these prices kind of confuse me a little bit. I guess Nascimento is very, very dangerous on the mat. He's a very good grappler, but Hernandez has never been subbed or nothing like that. So it's one I'm probably going to stay away from, but I would initially lean to that over.
Yeah, I do too. Here we got a big number here. 7 combined losses for these two guys. Neither one of them has ever been finished. So we got a couple of durable guys here. In particular, Nascimento's got a 25-fight career. So he's lost 6 times. He's never been finished. And Carlos Hernandez has lost once. He's never been finished. I don't even know if Carlos Hernandez has been finished as an amateur. Let's check that out because I know that Hernandez does have an extensive amateur career.
He has been subbed before.
Has been subbed. Okay. That's interesting that he's been subbed. Josh Neal, 124 of round 3. Okay. And other than that, nothing. So it's interesting. I like this fight to go to decision. And when we look at the numbers here for the non-violence props, we can see that they're overpriced by about 2% apiece. But when we look at the small sample size of UFC fights, these guys have always been to decision. So we're getting a nice little break here in that we're only overpaying by 2% on these lines, which is a fair price. I call, anywhere from 2 to 4% overpriced a fair price, simply because we've got to pay that VIG as gamblers no matter what. It's going to be on one side or the other. And if it's fairly priced, it'll be on both sides. So, yeah, I definitely like the over 2.5 here at minus 175. We can see that these guys do go to decision 44% of the time in their career, but obviously they're fighting much lower level guys. But at the UFC level, you see all 5 of their combined fights have went to decision. So I like these overs here, and they are not overpriced according to the benchmark, and they're certainly not overpriced according to the UFC analytics that we have on these two guys.
Yep, over would be where I'd look. And if this fight does finish, like I said, I think it's the Nascimento by sub, which is like plus 210. So yeah, give me the over or nothing on this one.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be betting Carlos Hernandez by decision, because Nascimento 4-6 in decisions in his career, but Hernandez 4-1 in decisions in his career. And I think Hernandez is going to have the slightly better stand up here, and he's shown really good efficiency on the ground. And Nascimento has only completed 20% of his takedown attempts at the UFC level, and that's on 15 takedown attempts. So it's a pretty good sample size. If he's unable to get this fight to the ground, I think it's very greasy. And at plus 500 for Hernandez by decision, I think it's a very wide line that's got a lot of value in it.
Yep, that, and we'll see what the decision only is as well. But yeah, plus 550 there on 365 for the decision prop. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. Yeah, kind of a tricky one here for me. We have Javid Basharat going against Mendoza, Mateus Mendoza. We have the over-under set at 2.5. It's about a pick, a minus 115 each way. Fight goes to decision plus 100. Fight doesn't go to decision is minus 130. Both guys are super dangerous, but both guys never lost, never been finished. Kind of a tricky one for me. Weezy, anything sticking out here?
Yeah, it's a great fight. 2 great prospects, both of them undefeated. We're shading. If we see now, the problem here, Brady, is that for these last 3 fights, we don't have big sample sizes of UFC data. So we've only got a 4-fight sample size. 50% of fights have went to decision, 50 haven't. So we've got numbers here that are overpriced by 6.5% and 10.5% according to the benchmark. And over here on the Fight Goes side, we've got more fairly priced lines, as this one's right on, and this one's underpriced by 3.38%. And then if we look at that over 2.5, we can see that 3 of their 4 combined fights have went over 2.5 rounds. Neither one of these guys has ever lost, so neither one of them has ever been finished. I could see this one going over, but it's one that I really don't have much interest either way, because they're both prospects. We've never seen either of them lose, so it's hard to know what the durability is on these guys. And we've got another guy in Mendoza who's making his debut. And let's face it, Basharat has looked fantastic so far. He's really not showing any holes in his game. He's still young. He's very well-rounded. I think Basharat gets the job done and wins this fight. But getting almost plus 300 on Mateus Mendoza is very intriguing, because he's a well-rounded fighter. He's got good wrestling. He's got good Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's got very creative and explosive striking, and he trains at Shoot Box with Alan Nascimento and Charles Oliveira and those guys, Diego Lima's Shoot Box. So he's a good opponent. Nothing's really sticking out here. Don't have enough of a sample size. Mendoza's making his debut. If you put a gun to my head, I would probably bet the unders here. They're not terribly overpriced according to the benchmark. But it's going to be a very interesting fight, and I'm probably just going to be watching it with no money on it.
Yep, same here. Great fight. Nothing sticking out at all. So I think we move on to this next one, which is a pretty violent one. We have Mateus Rebecki. See if I can find it there. Going against Nick Fiore. We have the over/under set at 1.5. The over 1.5 is minus 110. The under 1.5 is minus 120. The fight goes decision plus 200. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 260. And yeah, I think there's violence in this one. Fiore is another guy that I don't think has ever been over 1.5 rounds. I kind of would not mind that under 1.5 at minus 120. It was like minus 105 there, which I would have liked a little bit better. I'm thinking violence here.
Yeah, I am too. And Rebecki's a violent man. The way that he throws his overhand lefts are absolutely crazy. And then Fiore, 6-0 as a pro. All of those fights are finishes. And like you mentioned, Brady, round one, round one, round one, round one, round one, round one. And then he had a decision against Freddie Martinez in grappling. And then if we look here at the end, the amateur results, under 1.5, under 1.5 against the anabolic Arab, 145 of round one, 249 of round one, 22 seconds of round two, 37 seconds of round two. So this cat has never seen the 2.5-minute mark of round number two before. Now, he's taken the fight on short notice, Nick Fiore. And in addition to that, he's fighting a guy that's much better than the opponents that he's fought thus far. Rebecki, definitely a hot prospect, and he's very experienced as well. So, yeah, I think Rebecki does get this job done. I think he gets it done under 1.5 rounds. And if we look at those numbers here, the under 1.5 at minus 120 is overpriced by 21.12% according to the benchmark. So they're definitely trying to push you to bet that over. But like we said, Nick Fiore has never been over 1.5 rounds in his career. He's taken the fight on short notice and making his UFC debut. So those are all things that really lead us to that under 1.5. It's juiced to the tits when it's overpriced by 21.12%, but it's not like it's overpriced by 21% and you're paying minus 250, Brady. It's a little bit different when it's around even money. If you're overpaying, but you're still paying even money, you're not risking as much to win that one unit. So I think it's still a good look here, a potential parlay piece, because it would be surprising to see this fight go over 1.5 rounds.
Yeah, even the fight doesn't go could be a good parlay piece as well, even safer.
Agreed. Yeah, and it'll be a much wider number, but there's nothing wrong with that if you're parlaying a couple of these things together. And I see Eagles 1985 is asking where we can get the prop template. You can get that on my Patreon, Uncle WEEZY. The advanced option for $20 a month is not only going to have the new and improved prop template when I glean all the analytics from the last 10 years, but a lot of other stuff to go along with that. So patreon.com/Uncle WEEZY will give you access to this template every week, and it'll give you a data-driven look at all these time props for every damn fight, analytics for every fight, and for every particular bet that's offered.
Absolutely. All right. Next, we move on to the most violent fight of the night. We have Abdulrazak Al-Hassan going against Claudio Ribeiro. And yeah, kind of disappointed. This was probably my favorite spot on the card after watching tape. I'm like, yes, I'm going to hammer this under 1.5. But it's minus 245. So they're all over it. The over 1.5 is plus 195. The fight goes to decision plus 400. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 600. So yeah, they're onto it. They are onto it by a mile. So I probably won't have a bet here, but I think this fight ends within a round. I might look at like the fight won't start round 2, see what that is. Maybe even like the under half of a round, see what that is. But I'm not laying no minus 245 on under 1.5. Although I think it hits way more often than not. So WEEZY, what is sticking out on this one here?
Yeah, so, when we find out how overpriced the line is, it's when you compare the implied probability of the line to the long-term benchmark for the division, right? So we see that there, minus 600 is an 85.71% implied probability. And we look at how often do middleweight fights finish inside the distance. It's 55%. So you're overpaying by 30.58% when you compare that long-term benchmark to the implied probability that you're paying here. So, obviously this is not the kind of thing we go running to the window to bet. It's not the kind of thing we go running to the window to parlay. A degenerate parlay, sure, that's fine. But these lines, and the under 1.5 at minus 245 is even more underpriced according to the benchmark than the fight doesn't go to decision is. And you're really only paying up another 14% of implied probability. So it's kind of interesting here, how overpriced these violence props are here. And then you come over to this side and you look at this plus 195. Now that's underpriced by almost 30% when we price it according to the benchmark. And over 1.5, These guys are going over 1.5 about 36.5% of the time. We're only paying 33.9% here. And then you look at the last couple fights. Al-Hassan went to decision with Joaquin Buckley. And then you look at the last fight for Ribeiro before the Contender Series. He went 5 rounds in that fight, and that fight didn't get stopped until 2.5 minutes into round number 5. So with these lines being so overpriced on the violent side over here, Brady, it pushes me towards the non-violent side. And those numbers are big enough and fat enough that I might be willing to take a chance on it. But man, oh man, it might not be worth the gray hairs, because if these dudes just do stand in front of each other and bang, and Abdul Razak Al-Hassan doesn't try to clinch up, he doesn't try to slow things down and make Ribeiro uncomfortable, that's what you would want to do. Because if you just stand in front of Ribeiro, if you're Al-Hassan, that's giving Ribeiro the fight that he wants. I think Al-Hassan can use his judo and his clinch control to maybe win minutes, sweat free on the fence here and wear down Ribeiro, so that he doesn't have the ability to be able to walk forward, turn those hips, and throw those massive bombs that he throws. So this one is probably just going to be a stay away for me, because I don't have the sack to bet the overs here, even though that's where the value is. But these unders are so overpriced that I don't want to be on that side either.
Yeah, nothing's wrong with passing, and I learned that in the last year and a half. I'm so freaking confident this fight's going to end in the first round, but there's no value on it, and the best thing to do is just pass. So staying away from this one unless something crazy sticks out. But I'm not laying minus 245 on an under 1.5. Pretty easy pass for me.
Yeah, right. When it's overpriced by 34.33%, that's just a huge number. It's basically telling you, we'll give you a line for under 2.5, and here's the line. Fuck you.
Yeah,
that's basically what they're saying to you.
I want you to bet it.
Yeah, but you're going to parlay it probably. You're still probably going to parlay it because it's hard to picture this fight going 7.5 minutes.
And it's even harder seeing it go 15.
No. Yeah, you'll get rewarded with a big fat plus 400, but you're probably not cashing it that often.
Yeah, I mean, anything we've seen crazy things happen before, but man, it'd be shocking.
What was the one? Bruno Silva versus
Alex Pereira. That was
that's the one. Yeah, plus 500 or 600 or some shit, and it went. So it's not like it can't happen. It's just that you're not going to get those right a lot of the times. That's what it would have been for Pavlovich in his latest fight against Tuivasa. Everyone knew that wasn't going the distance, but they'll give you plus 600.
Oh yeah. All right, let us move on to the next fight. We have Umar Nurmagomedov going against Hayani Barcelos. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over juiced to minus 250. The under at plus 200. The fight goes to decision at minus 225. The fight doesn't go to decision at plus 185. I don't know. Another one I'm probably going to stay away from. I think this fight does go over. I think Hayani Barcelos, he's a very tough guy. He's a legit grappler, but he could potentially hurt Barcelos on the feet, maybe a club and sub situation. But I don't know. Not something that's really tempting me. But there is, I believe, a trifecta, which does have my interest here.
Yeah. Right here at the under 2.5, we do have a trifecta bet. So a plus 200, we have a 33.33% implied probability of the line. The divisional rate for under 2.5 in the men's bantamweight division in 3-round fights is 43.13%. So we take 43.13%, subtract 33.33%. That's a 10% edge almost that we're getting there over that benchmark. And then when we compare how often these guys go under 2.5 rounds to that implied probability, we're going to see a 45.45% under 2.5 rate combined at the UFC level for these two guys. We're only paying 33%, and these guys are going under 2.5 rounds combined at a 2.33% rate greater than what the division does. So if you're heavily on that Umar Nurmagomedov side and you feel like he can finish Hani Barcelos, might maybe take the plus 200 for the under 2.5 instead of the plus 225 for Nurmagomedov inside the distance, because then you can throw in the possibility that Umar dislocates his knee on a hook kick or some shit like that. At least you get both sides. But the violence is underpriced here. And I kind of see why, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, even though Umar is a big favorite here, people don't see Umar finishing a fighter of Hani Barcelos' quality, but they do see him easily winning the minutes and easily grinding out a decision. So if that's the case, maybe you're not paying minus 225 for Fight Goes, and you're just saying, give me that Nurmagomedov decision prop. But I think the value, Brady, is definitely on this side of the template, on the violence side. And for under 2.5 at plus 200, that's a fat number. That's happening 43% of the time, and you're really only paying 33%. So it's underpriced according to the benchmark, and it's underpriced by 12% according to the combined under 2.5 rates of these two guys at the UFC level. So interesting fight. It's underpriced for violence. I just don't know if I'm going to get there.
Man, Nurmagomedov by decision is minus 200.
Yeah, so they're saying that 67 out of 100 times Nurmagomedov wins this fight by decision, and that leaves 33 other results out of 100 for Nurmagomedov inside the distance, for Barcelos by decision, and for Barcelos inside the distance. So
wild.
Yeah, they're basically saying that it's going to be Umar by decision here, but this reminds me a little bit of that Sabatini-Damon Jackson fight, where you've got two really good grapplers who've got some power on the feet. And, I think that one got pushed because people thought, Sabatini's been grinding dudes out. He's been decisioning dudes, right? Well, it's a fight, and anything can happen. And both of these guys are extremely talented. So, they could catch each other with a big shot in the feet, or Umar could get Hani's back. Hani could panic, try to get back up to his feet, give up his back, and wind up giving up the rear naked choke. These Dagestani dudes that have been, coached by the Nurmagomedovs, they're starting to finish all of a sudden, Brady. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but Said Nurmagomedov has finished his last 3 wins. Umar has finished 2 out of his last 3 wins inside the distance here at the UFC level. Even Tagir is starting to finish fights now. So maybe we might see Umar continue that trend here. And if he does, plus 200 for the under 2.5 is a fat number, and it'd be a great bet to cash.
Yeah, I wish he was facing anybody but Barcelos, and I'd be betting that in a heartbeat. I think I have too much respect for Barcelos, to be honest.
I do too. I think I'm such a big fan of Barcelos, how well-rounded he is. Reminds me a lot of Jose Aldo, and it's going to be a great fight. But this is exciting because now we're gonna have a lot of questions answered about Umar Nurmagomedov that we desperately need to be answered. And I think we all kind of already know what those answers are, but we're going to be so much more sure of ourselves if he is able to look minus 700 against a fighter of Barcelos' quality.
Absolutely. Probably my favorite fight on the card, that one.
Me too, man. Me too. And then my least favorite fight right after.
Oh, no. We have Ketlin Vieira going against Raquel Pennington. We have the over 2.5 minus 350, under 2.5 plus 275. Fight goes to decision minus 325. Fight doesn't go to decision plus 250. Fight goes to disappointment minus 1,000. Fight doesn't go to disappointment plus 650. And I think I'm just going to parlay the fight goes to disappointment there at minus 1,000. I think there's value on that, to be honest.
Yeah, there is. Look, both of these ladies are durable. 3 of 10 combined losses inside the distance. It's only 2 of 7 at the UFC level. So they're even getting finished less at the UFC level, these ladies, than they are overall. So only 24% of their fights have finished inside the distance here. So, and those are usually some mismatch fights. This one goes to decision probably 80% of the time. And we're paying 76% on the line. So it's fairly priced. It's absolutely fairly priced. And I, even though you might be tempted to parlay that minus 350, that minus 325, just remember, parlaying things, you want to have some value on it. You just don't want to think that it's going to happen, because you got to find a couple other legs in order to parlay something with minus 350 to where it gets to be interesting, right? To where it gets to be close to plus money or plus money. So this is probably something that we just kind of stay away from here. It's overpriced for the non-violence props, and it probably, it definitely goes to disappointment, Brady, but 76% of their combined UFC fights have went to decision. So you'd expect to pay about minus 300, and you're paying minus 325, which is 76.47%. So yeah, man, it's fairly priced. I wouldn't recommend parlaying minus 325, minus 350s. So I think this is one you can safely just kind of stay away from, because I am not betting the unders here either.
I'm not. I can't bet on this fight. I can't put any money on this fight. Oh, by the way, the Strickland Imavov line dropped, and we have Imavov minus 170, Strickland plus 145.
Plus 145 for Strickland?
Yep.
And minus 170 then for what's the line on
Imavov? Yeah, 170.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with Sean taking it on this short notice, that's interesting, because what we know about Sean Strickland is that this dude's sparring pretty much every day anyway. The guy always is sparring, so I think he's going to be ready. We'll see how Nassourdine deals with that pressure. That's an interesting line.
Yeah, and it just moved too, so we'll see where that goes. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Punahele Soriano going against Roman Kopylov. We have the over-under set at 2.5, the over 2.5 plus 110, under 2.5 is minus 140. The fight goes to decision is plus 130. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 160. This is one of those ones where both guys are very dangerous. Punahele Soriano has a ton of power, as does Kopylov. But on the flip side, both guys are extremely tough, extremely durable, especially Punahele Soriano. The guy's an absolute brick for a head. So I don't know. I kind of think this one has a sneaky chance of going to decision, but I can't bet it. These guys are both killers. So another one where I'm just kind of just staying away from this one. But anything sticking out here, WEEZY?
Nothing really. I mean, obviously the violence side here is a little more overpriced at about between 6 and 7% overpriced than the non-violence side, which is between 2.3% underpriced and about 0.6% overpriced. So they're shading you a little bit towards these non-violence bets here. At the UFC level, these guys have went to decision in 4 of their 9 fights, so 44% of the time. So we actually have a small trifecta bet here for the over 2.5 rounds at plus 110, underpriced by 2.3% according to the benchmark. The line is underpriced by about 8% according to the over 2.5 rates of the two fighters combined at the UFC level. And these guys are going over 2.5 rounds at a 5.6% rate clip, higher than what the division does. But then, you've got two guys with a lot of power in Kopylov and Soriano, who probably aren't going to wrestle that much. So, man, I feel like I'd have to be getting a bigger plus money number to sit through that for 15 minutes and hope that neither one of these dudes lands a big bomb, which I think is probably going to happen. So, yeah, I'm leaning violence here, Brady, but it's just overpriced enough for me not to care at these current prices. And these plus money numbers aren't fat enough to get me running to the window to age watching a Kopylov Soriano fight that I hope doesn't wind up in violence.
Yeah, I'm actually leaning decision, but there's not a chance I'm even thinking about betting it. So just easy pass, sit back and watch this one. It should be fun.
Yeah,
right.
and Brady, it's the same thing with the Abdul Razak Al-Hassan fight, right? Where it's over 1.5, they're hanging this big fat plus money number. And yeah, the analytics are in your favor there. It is underpriced, but do you want to sit through an Abdul Razak Al-Hassan fight and hope that nobody lands a big shot? Because that's a very similar situation to what you'd be doing here if you were betting these overs. Because Puna's landing a knockdown on over 2% of the significant strikes that he lands. And for Kopylov, it's like 1.5%. So he's showing some power as well. So it's just one of those things. Just because the analytics are telling you to bet it, also look at what your eyes are telling you and determine, do you want to sit through a bet like that, hope it goes over, knowing that guys they hit like trucks.
Yeah. Is it worth losing months off your life?
Nope.
No. Gotta keep all those months. So next we have Dan Ige going against Damon Jackson, the co-main event, and we have the over/under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is -200. The under 2.5 is +160. The fight goes to decision -160. The fight doesn't go to decision is +120. And yeah, this is a Damon Jackson fight, so that automatically leads me to violence. Damon Jackson, a killer be killed fighter, a great finisher, great submission game. And on the flip side, he's been knocked out 3 times. He's also been submitted, and he's been finishing all 4 of his losses. So I like the violent side here. And although I like Ige a lot in this matchup, I already bet him inside the distance. I'm even considering adding on to that under 2.5 rounds because Ige has been put into some bad spots before. He has been able to get out of them. But, Damon Jackson, he has a good submission game. Maybe he could sub Ige. And then when this fight's on the feet, Ige has a ton of power. So, yeah, this +160, WEEZY, it's really sticking out to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I cashed in under 2.5 in Damon Jackson's last fight at +180 versus Pat Sabatini because Sabatini had only been finished once in his career, and that was when his elbow dislocated against Jason the Alley Cat Gonzalez. So, you see guys that, especially in Ige, he's never been finished in 6 pro losses, but Ige's extremely tough, extremely durable, but that doesn't matter. If you're in a rear naked choke, your brain needs blood no matter how tough you are. So, I could see Damon Jackson getting a submission here. I could certainly see Dan Ige getting a knockout here as the guy's got ridiculous power, and he's shown great power numbers over his time in the UFC here. And if we look at that under 2.5 number there at +160, Brady, it's actually a trifecta bet, but it's nothing that you go running to the window to bet because the analytics are screaming it, because it's only underpriced by 0.05% according to the benchmark, 2.45% according to the combined under 2.5 rates. And these guys go under 2.5 rounds at the UFC level at a 2.4% rate greater than what the division does. So underpriced by very small amounts according to all 3 benchmarks. But that wouldn't be as exciting if it was -250. But when the analytics bless it and you're getting a fat plus money number like +160, and then you could also say to yourself, Brady, Damon Jackson's been finished in all of his losses, and Ige's a slight favorite here, and that Damon Jackson is such a skilled submission artist that just because Ige's never been finished before, it doesn't mean that Damon Jackson doesn't find his neck and choke him out here. So +160 for that under 2.5 or +120 for the fight doesn't go. Those are both interesting looks, but just according to the template, Brady, you would rather go with that under 2.5 simply because it's providing more value according to all 3 of the benchmarks that we compare this data to.
Yep, like I said, that's something I might be adding on to. Just +160 seems ridiculous for a Jackson fight, and like you said, what was it, +190, +180 for the Sabatini under?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we were talking about, Brady. 19 of 22 of Damon Jackson's wins come inside the distance and 100% of his losses. So as a professional, Damon Jackson fights are finishing inside the distance 82.14% of the time, and we're only paying 38.46 for the under 2.5 here. Those are the kind of analytics that get you to say to yourself, not only do the analytics bless the bet, but we're on the right side getting that big fat plus money number instead of paying -250. The analytics mean so much more when they're underpriced according to all 3 metrics. When that line that you're getting is plus money, it means so much more, and you should be so much more likely to bet that.
100%. Yeah, I'll probably be hopping on that one myself. All right. So we don't have a main event to talk. I mean, we could talk a little bit about Imavov Strickland. Probably goes to decision, to be honest. Don't have a line on it. Any thoughts on the new main event?
All right, so let's show everybody how the sausage is made here, Brady. I can actually make a prop template here real quick for you guys. So let's go to UFC stats,
Make
and then
sausage.
I'm going to type in Sean Strickland here. All right, and Sean Strickland last fought December 17th, 2022. So I'm going to go here to UFC 12/17/2022. I'm going to find Sean Strickland. I'm going to paste his new data into the prop template, and then we're going to take a look at these numbers according now with Strickland in there. So I go to the advanced stats here. I've got Strickland's numbers here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to cut this, Brady. This is all of Sean Strickland's metrics that I keep. Control-C. And then I'm going to paste it into this week's prop template, which is this one right here. Let's give my extremely slow computer some time to bring this shit up here. All right, so now we've got Imavov, Gastelum. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to take Gastelum's numbers, and we're just going to replace them with Strickland's.
There you go.
All right, then we got Sean Strickland. All right, now we don't have over-unders because it's a new fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's what we know. Sean Strickland and Nassourdine Imavov are finishing inside the distance only 36% of the time at the UFC level. A total of 8 of 22 of their combined fights have finished inside the distance. But if we go to the 5-round analytics here and we look at middleweights, we see that 59% of middleweight fights finish inside the distance that are 5-round fights. So, we've got guys that are not finishing here, and it's going to be up a weight class, so neither one of these guys is going to be cutting weight. Sean Strickland probably will barely have to cut any weight to make 205. Yeah. And especially Imavov, he probably was already less than 205 pounds, being only 5 days out from the weigh-in anyway. So I think we're going to see both guys at their best. Sean Strickland's always ready. That's why he was probably the first call that they made. They probably tried to get Chris Curtis, because they knew that he'll take any fight anytime on no notice. But those guys train together for a reason, because they're both always ready to fight. So yeah, a 59% finish rate, but these guys are only finishing 36% of the time as professionals. So I'll be looking to see where that fight opens. And if we could get a fight goes at plus money here, that would be very interesting for this one. But it's 5 rounds. We're going to have to take a look and see where these lines open. But these guys do not finish very often, but we've never seen Imavov go 5 rounds before. So that would be something that would probably push you off of an over bet, just because you don't know how Nassourdine's going to look for 25 minutes here. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Probably will be staying away from it because of the short notice nature, up a weight class. But it's definitely an odd situation here. But at least we were able to look at some numbers.
Yeah, I just wish the Vieira Pennington fight fell off rather than the Gastelum. But so they had the over 4.5 in the Gastelum fight at -170. I imagine it's probably going to be around there as well. Strickland, a very durable guy, and Strickland not much of a finisher. Doesn't really seem to have much urgency as well. So I would lean towards probably being around there. I agree with Blood Money in the chat. But yeah, WEEZY, we did it. Now just go over any spots that stuck out, and then I'll kind of do the same.
So I've got a 2-unit bet on that Cachuera Eubanks over 2.5. I tried to find a line that said that this will be the most handsome fight of the week, but they're not even offering that. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to lose money on that either. So, that's a 2-unit bet for me at plus 160, but at plus 135, Brady, I absolutely think it's still bettable there. I have a 1-unit bet on the under 2.5 rounds for, the Dalgarian Argetta fight, because Dalgarian has never seen a second round in his 9-fight pro and amateur career. And then let me get this spreadsheet off, and we'll look at the rest of these props. The Rebecki under 2.5 or under 1.5 at -120, I think is actually bettable. The The Nascimento Hernandez fight goes to decision at -150. I think is actually bettable as well as the -175 for the over 2.5. I would rather actually bet the -175 for the over 2.5 there. Rebecki Fiore, I like that under. I think if you're willing to do that gray hair thing, the +195 for the over 1.5 and Al-Hassan might be worth it, but I don't have the sack to do it. Like that under 2.5, it's a trifecta bet for Barcelos Nurmagomedov at +200. And I also like the under 2.5 at +160 for Egage versus Jackson. I think that's a good look as well.
I agree on most. Not a ton sticking out, but I do like the violence in the Flick Johnson fight, the under there. I'm also with you on the Argetta Dalgarian under 2.5. It's still a plus money. I don't think it's going to be there much longer, to be honest. What else? I like the Rebecki Fiore, like some type of violence there, whether it's the under 1.5. Maybe I'll see what the fight won't start round 3 is going to be the under 2.5. Other than that, I'm not touching that Vieira fight with the 10-foot pole. Love me some Damon Jackson, Danny Ige under at like +160. I think that's a very interesting number. And then we'll have to see where the props open up for that new Strickland fight, WEEZY. So, any PP legs sticking out to you?
Yeah. So, I think Johnson Flick. If we're gonna parlay some stuff that we just think is going to happen, how about we do Johnson Flick fight doesn't go to decision? How about we do Nascimento Hernandez over 2.5, and then we do the Rebecki Fiore fight doesn't go to decision, which I don't even think is available yet.
Yeah, it's -260.
-260. If you were to parlay those 3 things together, what would we get?
+208.
That's not bad. I think that's a decent look there.
Yeah, I'd be kind of surprised if either of those legs didn't hit.
Yeah, it would be difficult to see that happening, like the Fiore fight going the full 3 rounds when Fiore's taking it on short notice, making his debut. In addition to that, the Flick coming off a 2-year retirement, going 3 rounds against Charles Johnson, probably not going to happen. But I just want to say, Brady, that I wouldn't bet those straight. I wouldn't bet that Flick line straight, and I wouldn't bet the Rebecki Fiore line straight. But if we're looking to get something that with 3 things that we think are going to happen that gives you a decent plus money number, I think that's a good parlay.
Yeah, for sure. All right. But yeah, we did it. All 12 fights. WEEZY, let the people know where they can find you and what you have planned throughout the week. I know you're going live Tuesday, and we'll be back on Pub Sports Radio for the DraftKings show. But yeah, let them know what else.
Yeah, so Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Central Time, Just the Tip with Uncle WEEZY on my YouTube channel, Uncle WEEZY. Wednesday, Pub Sports Radio, 6 o'clock Central Time for the DFS show. Wednesday night, right back on Uncle WEEZY's channel for Ask WEEZY. And I am finishing up the last 2 years of my data import project to get every UFC fight that's happened between January 1st, 2013 and the current day, so that we can glean all analytics for all weight classes over the last 10 years. And I'm going to be building that into the Patreon, into the prop template, and trying to give the best analytics package that UFC gamblers can buy. That'll include DFS data, significant strike data, distance strike data, and all these prop analytics, all these over-under bets, and the benchmarks for all the division. It's all going to be available. So check me out on the Patreon, patreon.com/Uncle WEEZY. And let's all stack cash tickets like flapjacks for the return of the UFC in 2023, UFC Vegas 67. Let's have a great year, Brady, and really stack them high.
Let's do it. You can follow me on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers. I just posted my full card breakdown. Wish I would have knew about the Strickland news a little bit sooner, but that's out. I'll probably do like a separate breakdown for the Strickland fight. But yeah, guys, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I believe Mushroom and Lou will be coming out with a video on the channel around Wednesday. Not the return, the first appearance ever of Mushroom. Looking forward to it. I have it circled on my calendar. So make sure you guys are subscribed so don't miss out on that. And other than that, yeah, guys, best of luck. First card of 2023. Let's make it a good one, and see you later.